These individuals shared something crucial. In common, they knew that within themselves there was the potential to achieve more. They knew that they could be something greater than where they started. They were willing to invest their time, their energy, and their dedication to improve their lives. The possibilities that come with acquiring more skills are just extraordinary. So let me share a few brief stories and we can draw a few lessons from them. One is about two women who each sold their businesses to Berkshire Hathaway for many, many millions of dollars. Both of these women started with just $2,500. By pure coincidence, the exact same amount. And it was everything they had. One of these women arrived in Seattle in 1917, unable to speak any English, and she had a tag around her neck that read Fort Dodge, Iowa. The Red Cross helped her reach Fort Dodge, where she was reunited with her husband, who had come to America a couple of years before her. She spent 2 years in Fort Dodge, and as she put it, she felt like a fool. She couldn't grasp the language, couldn't learn a word of it. So she and her husband decided to move to Omaha in 1919, where she found a small Russian Jewish community, and she began to feel more at home. As her oldest daughter, for since went to school, she would come home and teach her mother words of Hindi. This woman, Rose Blumkin, spent 20 years saving every penny she could, bringing her siblings over, and eventually her parents as well. $50 at a sewing time. She sold used clothing to help make that happen. And during that time, she had 4 children. By 1937, after 20 years of hard work, she had saved $2,500, and with that amount, she went to Chicago to buy what she could furniture. Her lifelong dream had always been to open a furniture store. This woman, who had never attended school a day in her life, started a business with just $2,500. But like the people here today, she had a dream and a determination to turn that dream into reality. She worked tirelessly to make her business succeed. In 1983, I bought that business from her for about $60 million. And just last year, that same company did over $1.5 billion in business. Now the 4th generation is involved in that business. Rose Blumkin worked for me until she was 103 years old, after which she retired and passed away the following year. Her life serves as a lesson for all of us about the dangers of premature retirement. You never know what might happen next. Mrs. Blumkin, with her $2,500 and her sheer determination, built an extraordinary business. One more remarkable fact about her: she could neither read nor write, yet she entered the furniture business. She didn't offer anything particularly unique in terms of products, but she had something far more valuable, an unrelenting will to succeed. She knew she could outwork anyone else. She cared deeply about her customers, and she worked with very low margins. She created a tremendous business. I also saw another woman who started with $2,500 and went on to build a business that I eventually purchased for hundreds of millions of dollars. This made me think, maybe I should go straight to the source and find these people before they come to me asking for hundreds of millions of dollars. I'd much prefer to join them earlier on, so I followed this group of individuals closely. Today, I'd like to share with you the story of one other small business owner. This individual, when I approached him to buy his company, turned me down, which in hindsight was a very wise decision. This man was born in 1922, about 8 years before I was in the Midwest. He was a pretty good athlete, but wasn't particularly fond of school. Early on in his story, you may even be able to guess who he is. His company is known for hiring more college graduates each year than any other company in the United States. This person, destined for great things, but not aware of it at the time, went to college for a year and dropped out. He wasn't really interested in academics. That year was 1941, and shortly after dropping out, when the United States was attacked, he went down to the Army Air Force recruiting station to volunteer. However, they turned him down because of his hay fever. So he went to the Navy, volunteered again, and this time they accepted him. He was placed on an aircraft carrier where he flew small planes during World War II. He earned 2 distinguished flying crosses from the Navy. After the war, he returned to the Midwest. By this time, he was probably around 23 or 24 years old. And the remarkable thing is, he returned to the Midwest with a unique perspective on life. Jack went from job to job for some time before finally becoming a used car salesman at a Cadillac dealership in St. Louis, Missouri. At the age of 35, after climbing up in the sales organization, he approached his boss and asked if he could go into the car leasing business with him. The boss responded by saying that Jack would have to cut his salary in half and borrow $25,000 to become partners in a car leasing company. Jack agreed, and at age 35, he entered the car leasing business, starting with just 7 cars. It was a slow start, and one of the tactics he used to make his business appear busy was to let the phone ring 3 or 4 times before picking it up. The hope was that callers would think he was busy answering other calls, even though it was likely the only call he would get all day. His first attempt at business was going okay, but it wasn't looking like it would go anywhere. However, at age 40, Jack decided to take a risk. With only 17 cars, he entered the car rental business, competing against major companies like Hertz, Avis, Motivational, who had fleets of hundreds of thousands of cars. Jack's fleet of 17 cars was no different from theirs. He bought his cars from the same manufacturers, such as General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler. He couldn't even get airport locations like the big companies had. Despite these challenges, he was determined to offer something that the larger companies could not friendlier service. His strategy was to provide customers with an experience that would make them want to return, even if he couldn't offer a different car. He named his company after the battleship USS Enterprise, from which he had flown during World War II. Jack passed away about a year or a year and a half ago, but by the time of his death, his rental car company, starting with just those 17 cars, was worth more than Hertz, Avis, and all the other major rental car companies combined. His name was Jack Taylor, and his son, Andy Taylor, and a good friend of mine, Cole Crind. A grandchild is also involved, and it seems likely there will be a 4th generation in the future. Jack Taylor didn't invent artificial intelligence, and he didn't come up with any groundbreaking technology or ideas. His success came from building relationships with people, delighting his customers, and working hard. Like Mrs. V, who sold furniture, Jack's success came from doing something that anyone could have done, but he did it with exceptional care and attention to his customers. He focused on building strong relationships so that customers would keep coming back. Jack knew he couldn't personally take care of every rental car issue, but he found ways to project his positive attitude and desire to help others. He learned how to turn ordinary cars into an extraordinary business by focusing on people and relationships. His story shows several important lessons. One is that you don't always get everything right the first time. For example, his car leasing business wasn't exactly a huge success, as it mostly relied on the cost of financing cars. It was hard to delight customers when the service mainly consisted of handing them a car and having them send a check every month for 5 years. However, with the experience he gained, Jack found his true calling when he entered the rental car business. He turned a typical industry into something special by focusing on what mattered, customer experience. He didn't worry about things he couldn't control, such as what the Federal Reserve was doing or whether the stock market was up or down. So he focused on what he could change, delighting his customers. I once went down to Florida to try to convince Jack to sell his company to Berkshire Hathaway. He was smart enough to refuse the offer, and the company's value has likely quadrupled since then. Jack's ability to see the value of his business was evident, and it reminds me of Henry Ford, who failed twice before founding the Ford Motor Company in 1903. The true test of success is not whether you get the perfect business idea the first time, but whether you keep learning from your experiences and continue improving. Jack Taylor's story is a great example of perseverance and the importance of building strong customer relationships. It's a lesson that all entrepreneurs can learn from, especially those in small businesses. Having a genuine desire, day in and day out, to delight the customer is crucial. I've seen many businesses, but I have never seen one that delights its customers and fails. What you want is for the customer, when thinking about renting a car or buying furniture, to remember the place where they had a great experience. They may not recall what they paid for something, or who even gave it to them, but they'll remember the treatment they received when they made that purchase. You might forget the price, but you will never forget whether the experience was positive or negative. A person who has had a wonderful, delighted experience with a purchase is likely to return. On the other hand, if the memory of the experience is of rudeness, indifference, or anything else negative, they will never come back. As a small business owner, and as your business grows, it's important not only to project that genuine interest in people's well-being and delight, but also to spread that attitude through your employees. You can't do this through people who feel they're not treated fairly or their opinions aren't considered. So it's essential to learn how to multiply your efforts through others. For example, when advising young people, I often highlight the importance of making the right personal choices. The most important decision most people will make in their life is choosing a spouse. It's also crucial to surround yourself with people who are better than you, as you will move in the direction of those you associate with. I've been incredibly lucky in this respect, having had teachers, friends, and a spouse who were all better people than I was. I learned from them and realized that life goes better when you act with integrity. It took me a while to understand this, but I advise you to look for people who are examples to you rather than those you think you need to change. Some simple rules like delighting customers, working through others, and associating with people who will lead you toward a better path can take you far in life. They have guided people like Rose Blumpkin, who started without knowing a word of English and without being able to read or write, and still built what is now $1.5 billion business. The interesting thing is the total amount of money put into the Nebraska Furniture Mart since its start is only $2,500 in capital. And if you look at the business of enterprise, I'm guessing that very little additional equity capital has been put in over the years. The business grew on its own, which is proof that success doesn't necessarily require large initial investments, but it does require the right approach. I also want to express my admiration for this group. When I met Dr. Mio's class on September 22nd, 8 years ago, I was thrilled. I admire what you've all done. While balancing your jobs, you took on the hard